Ferrari just lost the one thing that could have saved their season, and at the exact same time, a brutal truth has been exposed. They are down by up to 25 horsepower to Mercedes right now on track. And here's what makes this even worse. The upgrade that was supposed to fix everything is delayed, not coming when they need it most, which means every race from this moment forward, Ferrari is fighting a battle they cannot win on pure speed. And if that gap keeps costing them points, by the time the solution finally arrives, there may be nothing left to save. At the start of the season, Ferrari believed they could manage the situation. Not solve it immediately, manage it. Hold position, limit the damage, stay close enough until the ADUO arrived. That was the plan, because internally, they knew the weakness was there. They knew the power deficit existed, but they also believed it was temporary, something they could survive, something they could compensate for. But that assumption is now collapsing, because the gap isn't stabilizing. It's becoming clearer, more visible, more exposed with every race. Up to 25 horsepower is not something you hide. It's something everyone sees. And more importantly, something everyone uses. Because now, Ferrari's rivals don't just know they're faster. They know exactly where they're faster. The straights, the exits, the moments where acceleration defines everything. And that turns every race into a predictable pattern. Ferrari gains time in corners, then loses it all in a few seconds. And when that happens lap after lap, the result becomes inevitable. But here's where it becomes even more dangerous, because this isn't just about losing time. It's about losing control. Control of strategy, control of positioning, control of the race itself. Because when you know you're weaker on the straights, you can't take the same risks. You can't commit to aggressive strategies. You can't rely on overtaking when you need it. And that forces Ferrari into a defensive mindset, protecting, managing, reacting, instead of attacking. But here's the deeper impact. Because while Ferrari is forced into that position, their rivals are doing the opposite. They're pushing, they're exploiting, they're planning their races around Ferrari's weakness, waiting for those moments where the power difference becomes decisive. And that's where races are lost. Not in one big moment, but in a series of small, unavoidable losses. But here's the part that connects everything. Because this situation would be manageable if the solution was close, if the ADUO was arriving next race, if the fix was immediate. But it's not. It's delayed. And that delay changes everything. Because now Ferrari isn't just managing a weakness. They're trapped in it, forced to carry it through multiple races, losing points, losing ground, losing momentum. And momentum in Formula One is everything. Because once you lose it, it's incredibly difficult to get it back. But here's where the pressure starts to build inside the team. Because now every race becomes a countdown, not toward victory, but toward the upgrade. Waiting, hoping, trying to survive long enough for it to arrive. And that kind of mindset is dangerous, because it shifts focus away from winning now to surviving until later. And in a championship fight, that's how you fall behind. But here's the final layer. Because this isn't just a technical delay, it's a psychological one. Because both drivers know the truth. They know where they're losing time. They know why they're being overtaken. And they know there's nothing they can do about it. And that creates frustration, pressure, and eventually mistakes. Because when you push harder to compensate for something the car can't give you, you cross the limit. And in Formula One, that's when everything goes wrong. So now, Ferrari is facing a situation that is far more serious than it looks. Not just a slower car, not just a delayed upgrade, but a phase of the season where they are vulnerable in every race. And the longer that phase lasts, the harder it becomes to recover. Because by the time the solution finally arrives, the damage might already be done. And this is where the situation becomes something Ferrari cannot control anymore. Because the longer the delay continues, the more the season starts to move without them. Because Formula One doesn't pause. It doesn't wait for upgrades. It keeps moving forward race after race, point after point. And while Ferrari is stuck managing a known weakness, their rivals are building something much more dangerous: consistency. Because while Ferrari loses small amounts every weekend, others are gaining small amounts. And those small gains add up, quietly, relentlessly, until suddenly the gap is no longer small. But here's where it becomes critical. Because once that gap reaches a certain point, it changes the objective completely. You're no longer fighting for the championship. You're fighting to stay relevant in it. And that's the line Ferrari is approaching. Not crossed yet, but getting closer with every race they run without that power. But here's the deeper problem. Because this delay doesn't just affect results, it affects development. Because now Ferrari is forced to split its focus. Do they continue developing the current car, knowing it has a fundamental limitation? Or do they shift resources toward the upgrade and the future? And that decision is incredibly risky. Because focusing too much on the present means losing time on the solution. But focusing too much on the future means sacrificing even more results now. And that's the trap. Because there is no perfect choice. Only consequences. But here's where the tension reaches another level. Because inside the team, expectations don't disappear. They increase. Every race without improvement raises more questions, more pressure, more scrutiny. Because this is Ferrari. A team expected to fight at the front, not explain why they can't. And that internal pressure changes everything. It affects decisions. It affects communication. It affects how aggressively they approach each weekend. And sometimes it leads to mistakes. But here's the part that defines what happens next. Because even in this situation, Ferrari still has one path. Survival. Minimize losses. Stay close enough. Hold on until the upgrade finally arrives. Because if they can do that, if they can limit the damage, then everything changes when the power comes back. But if they can't, if the gap grows too large, if too many points are lost, then the story is already written before the solution even appears. And that leads to the final truth. This isn't just a delay. It's a race against time. A race Ferrari is currently losing, not on track, but in development. Because every race they run without that extra power is a race their rivals use to move further away. And in Formula One, catching up is always harder than staying ahead. So now, everything comes down to one question. Can Ferrari survive long enough to turn their solution into a comeback? Or will this delay quietly decide the championship before they ever get the chance to fight for it? And now we arrive at the moment where everything becomes irreversible because there's a point in every season where waiting is no longer an option. And Ferrari is getting dangerously close to that point. Because up to now, they've been telling themselves the same thing. Just hold on. Just survive. The upgrade is coming. But the reality is starting to shift. Because every race without that power is not neutral. It's negative. Points lost. Opportunities missed. Gaps increasing. And those losses don't reset when the upgrade arrives. They stay. They define the championship. But here's where it becomes even more brutal. Because when the ADUO finally comes, Ferrari won't just be fighting their rivals. They'll be fighting the past. Everything they lost before. Every race where they couldn't defend. Every moment where they couldn't attack. Every opportunity that slipped away on the straights. And recovering that is one of the hardest things in Formula One. Because even if you become faster, you still need others to slow down. You still need mistakes from your rivals. You still need perfect execution every single weekend. And that's a level of pressure that leaves no room for error. But here's the final twist. Because there is one scenario where all of this changes. One narrow path where Ferrari turns this entire situation around. If they survive, if they keep the gap manageable, if they stay within reach, then the moment the power arrives, everything flips. The weakness disappears. The confidence returns. The momentum shifts. And suddenly, the team that was struggling becomes the one chasing victory again. But if they don't, if the gap becomes too large, if too many points are lost, then the upgrade doesn't save the season. It only explains what could have been. And that's the final truth behind this entire story. This isn't just about a delayed upgrade. It's about timing, pressure, and survival. Because in Formula One, being fast is not enough. You have to be fast when it matters. And right now, Ferrari is running out of time to make that happen. And this is where everything reaches its final, unavoidable conclusion. Because at some point, the season stops being about potential and becomes about reality. And Ferrari is right on that edge. Because all season long, there has been one narrative protecting them. The idea that the car is not complete yet. The belief that once the power arrives, everything will change. But now, that belief is being tested. Because the longer the delay continues, the more one question starts to take over everything. What if the recovery comes too late? Because think about what has already happened. Races where they couldn't defend. Moments where they couldn't attack. Situations where Hamilton and Leclerc did everything right and still lost out on straights. And all of that is already part of the championship. Already counted. Already lost. But here's the part that defines everything. Because when the upgrade finally arrives, Ferrari won't be judged on potential anymore. They'll be judged on results. Immediate results. Because there will be no more excuses, no more explanations, no more limitations to point at. And that pressure is completely different. Because now the expectation is simple. Win, fight, deliver. But here's the reality. Even with more power, the car is not perfect. There are still weaknesses. Tire degradation, setup sensitivity, a narrow operating window. And that means one thing. The upgrade doesn't solve everything. It only removes the biggest problem. And that leaves Ferrari in a very specific position. Stronger, but not complete. Faster, but still vulnerable. And in a championship fight, that can still be enough to lose. But here's the final twist that brings everything together. Because this entire situation comes down to something much bigger than performance. Timing. Because if Ferrari becomes fast after the championship is already decided, then speed means nothing. But if they become fast just before that moment, then everything changes. And that's why this delay is so dangerous. Because it's not just about how much performance they gain. It's about when they gain it. And that leads to the final truth. This season will not be defined by Ferrari's potential. It will be defined by their timing. Because right now, they are not racing just against their rivals. They are racing against the clock. And in Formula One, that is the one opponent you can never overtake.